It was one of those nights where the world feels like it's holding its breath. An empty parking lot, the kind with cracked asphalt and flickering lights that can't decide if they're alive or dead. I was leaning against my truck, hands in my coat pockets, and across from me stood the man who had ended my boy's life. No smirk on his face this time, no badge to hide behind. Just the two of us and the cold air between. People like to think moments like this come out of nowhere. They don't. They build slow, heavy until the day the weight tips and everything spills out. For me, that started a month earlier on a damp, quiet night when my 19-year-old son, Marcus, was just trying to get home. He'd gone to the corner store for milk and bread. Hoodie pulled up against the chill, plastic bag swinging at his side. From the far end of the street came that slow crawl of tires on wet pavement, an unmarked cruiser sliding into view. The spotlight snapped on, chasing him across the sidewalk until it pinned him in place. "Hold up, son. Where you headed this time of night?" The voice was flat, laced with suspicion, like it was the default setting. Marcus stopped, shifted the bag to his other hand. "Just going home," he said, soft and steady, the way every black kid learns to talk when there's a gun nearby. The officer stepped out, boots hitting the ground like he owned it. "You look a little suspicious out here alone," he said, closing the gap. Marcus lifted his hand slightly, palms open, bag dangling from his wrist. "I'm just coming from the store." And that's as far as he got. No warning. Just the click of a safety and the deafening crack of a gunshot. The bag hit the ground, first apples bouncing, bread soaking in the gutter. Marcus followed Hoodie, blooming dark in the streetlight. I was in my kitchen when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm enough to sound fake. By the time I heard shot and died at the scene, my grip had crushed the receiver against my ear. Next thing I remember, I'm at the barricade staring at my boy lying under the pale hum of a streetlight that went out halfway through. I whispered, "That's my boy," like the words could pull him back. But the man who shot him just stood there scanning the street like nothing about this was out of the ordinary. The funeral came with steel gray skies and air so cold it felt like punishment. I shook hands, nodded at condolences I didn't hear. Then across the street, leaning against his cruiser like he had all the time in the world, was the officer. Crisp uniform, relaxed posture, and that smirk. That was the moment. Not the shot, not the call, that smirk. That was when I made my promise. I went home and didn't sleep for 2 nights. By the third, I was in my workshop, staring at a raw length of steel. My hands knew what to do before my head did. Heat hammer shape over and over until the rhythm of the blows was the only thing keeping me from coming apart. I wrapped the handle in an old strip of canvas, pulled it tight until it felt like it belonged in my grip. It wasn't about rushing in. It was about patience, the kind my father taught me when he said, "Measure twice, cut once." Except now it was watch twice, strike once. I started small, talking to folks who'd been on their porches that night. A neighbor in his 60s told me he saw the officer pull the gun before Marcus even spoke. The clerk at the corner store slipped me a phone video from her niece across the street. It showed everything. Gun already out, hands up, one shot. That little phone felt heavier than a brick. Proof. Dangerous in the wrong hands. And exactly what I needed in mine. I began shadowing him from a distance. The diner where he ate breakfast, the bar where he laughed too loud, the alley he used as a shortcut after work. I didn't hide enough to be invisible, just enough to make him notice. 3 days and his glances started to last longer. 5 days in a patrol car began sitting down the block from my house at odd hours. He was curious now. Good. One Thursday, I parked in the abandoned strip mall he liked to cut through. Didn't stay long, just enough for him to clock it. I wanted him to think he was closing in on me when really I was clearing the stage. The night it happened, the air was colder than the forecast had promised. My truck was in the same lot under the same weak light, Rod under a tarp in the bed. I didn't move when the headlights slid across the cracked pavement. Didn't move when his door shut. He walked toward me, voice low. Couldn't stay away, huh? I stepped out, coat collar up. I told you we'd see each other again. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. And now what? You're going to talk me to death? I didn't answer. My hand found the rod, and before he could blink, the first swing cracked against his temple. The sound was dull, but final. He staggered, knees dipping. Second swing, other side of the head, dropped him to the asphalt. He tried to push himself up, but the third blow sent him face first into the dark. I stood over him, chest heaving, rod hanging loose at my side. I crouched, grabbed his collar, tilted his head just enough for him to see my eyes. Now you know what it feels like to be powerless, I told him. No more smirk, just pain, confusion, and maybe for the first time, fear. I let him drop and walked back to my mud truck, slid the rod under the tarp. Engine started, and I drove away without looking back. By morning, the video was online. No captions, no speeches, just raw truth. And truth doesn't need commentary to burn. It spread like fire in dry grass. By noon, knots of people were outside the courthouse holding signs with Marcus's name in letters so bold they looked carved into the air. The chief resigned within 2 weeks. The officer, my son's killer, was under investigation. I didn't march, didn't give speeches. I just watched the city wake up. Because once people see something they can't unsee, it's not yours anymore. It's theirs. A month later, a bronze plaque went up on the corner where Marcus fell. I stood there, hand on the cool metal, remembering him leaning against that same wall, laughing with a candy bar in hand. The ache was still there, but it had shifted. No longer the weight of something unfinished, more like the kind of scar you carry without shame. That night, I put the rod back in its place in the workshop. It's just steel now, a tool for a single job. A job that's done. And here's the thing, this was never just about Marcus. It's about a truth older than any law. Dignity is the last thing nobody should be allowed to take from you. I wasn't out for blind rage. I was out to make sure silence didn't win. So I'll leave you with this. When you see someone standing alone against something bigger than them, don't mistake their quiet for weakness. Sometimes it's just the breath before action. Now tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you have trusted the system or taken justice into your own hands? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about what justice really means when the law isn't enough.